Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 72 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. Today, we have Amanda Patterson Crowe on the show from In Gear Career, which is now a program of Hiring Our Heroes. And Amanda will talk a little bit more about the connection with Hiring Our Heroes during the interview, so we can wait till then to hear more about that. Before we jump into it, I just wanted to apologize. I'm a little bit late, a few hours late today with getting the episode out. I am on vacation, out in Tucson, Arizona, visiting my family. And also, while I'm here, I was invited by Joanna Sweat from the Veterans Directory to be a guest lecturer for a 4block.org class that Joanna is teaching. And I spoke to the group last night, and it was very cool. Definitely a class full of leaders. And I'm hoping that I can book 4block on the show so that we can find out more about them, because I really like what they're doing. Okay, so for today's episode, as I mentioned, I interview Amanda Patterson Crowe from In Gear Career. As the program manager for In Gear Career, a program of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Hiring Our Heroes, Amanda Patterson Crowe serves as an advisor to career-minded military spouses in networking chapters across the globe. In Gear Career's 20-plus chapters work to create connections in their local communities and serve as a jumping-off point for military spouses moving to the area and looking for professional connections. As a U.S. Navy veteran and now military spouse, Amanda also puts her own experience to work answering career questions in the new column Dear Career, a collaboration between military.com and Hiring Our Heroes. More of Amanda's writing on military spouse career issues can also be found monthly on NextGen Military Spouse. It was great talking with Amanda, and I think you're going to enjoy this episode, so let's jump right into it. Amanda, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really interested in finding out what you guys have going on with In Gear Career. And as a matter of fact, I kind of wanted to start off just kind of getting the brief description of what is the organization? What is In Gear Career?
Sure, yeah. So we are a chapter-based organization, and our focus is on networking. We like to help military spouses in particular make networking connections in their new location, whether that be because of PCS or transitioning out of the military for their family, hopefully to make the time that they spend searching for their next career opportunity just a little bit shorter.
Gotcha. We're going to get into that a whole lot more. But first, I kind of wanted to find out about your background.
Sure. So yeah, I, like most military spouses, have a varied background. I myself went to college at Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri. I grew up in Missouri. And I actually joined the Navy Reserve in 2002. It was something that I had actually thought about for a long time, doing military service. My grandmother was actually a wave in World War II, and my grandfather served in the Navy and another one in the Army. And it was just something I had thought about. I joined the reserves rather than going active duty so that I could continue my graduate work and finish school. But I spent 6.5 years actively drilling and finished out an 8-year contract with the reserves. And I did one deployment overseas, spending 8 long, hot months in Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was an interesting time for sure. Since then, I married an active duty military guy myself. I'm married to a Navy guy. So I became that military spouse role and started serving in that role as well, and did some defense contract work, helped work on the planning team for a military exercise. And then, like many military spouses, found myself facing a PCS. And it happened to be in 2013 when sequestration was happening, and a lot of that. So finding the defense positions was not as easy a task as it used to be. And we moved to someplace I knew no one, and I really just wasn't sure, what was next. And I decided at that time that I wanted to take a look at the nonprofit realm. I had really enjoyed volunteering and doing some work with military families, and I wanted to find a way to do that. And I was lucky enough to hear the chairman of the board for In Gear Career speaking at a family orientation event, and basically stalked her. I always joke after that meeting, stood around until I was sure that I could talk to her and find out more, and started volunteering for the organization. And then when they were ready to hire national staff, I threw my hat in the ring and was selected to be the executive director.
Very nice. Very nice. And I also saw that you write for military.com. Is that correct?
I do, actually. It's really great. As part of my role now with In Gear Career, we have a great relationship with military.com, and I write a biweekly column every other week called Dear Career. So you can write in military spouse career related questions, and I will answer those as the, kind of Dear Abby style format, but just trying to capture those questions and give people advice on what they should do in their career path.
Wow, that's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the fun part.
You have a huge backlog of people writing in, asking questions.
We get a good amount of questions, but we are always looking for more. We do try to keep them stacked up, but I try to get through as many as I can, as quickly as I can. So we'd love to have folks write in more of those questions.
Excellent. Well, listeners, you hear that? Any questions that you have, I'll put information in the show notes for how you can get in contact.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we've got an email address that they can just write those questions to, and they'll go straight to me for answering them for the column. They can just write it to dearcareer@military.com.
And so you said that you served on both sides. You were in the military, and then you became a military spouse. So you're uniquely qualified for what you're doing with In Gear Career, and also with writing for military.com. I would love it if you can kind of talk about maybe what you noticed when you moved over to being a military spouse.
Yeah, it's really interesting. First and foremost, I'll tell you that, especially as I've done the work within Gear Career, I meet a lot of spouses who have prior service. And one of the first things I would say is that the assumption is typically that that's not the case. So no matter what you're talking about, and it doesn't mean that anybody's being mean or anything like that, but typically if you're starting a conversation with somebody about being a military spouse, the assumption is then that you don't have prior service yourself. And it's interesting, and I don't know if that's because if I've identified myself as a military spouse first and not a veteran, that they just assume I would have said veteran first, and sometimes I do. But it really just depends on the circumstance and, kind of what we're discussing and what we're trying to do. And I will say that, interestingly enough, when it comes to employment, and I know we're going to get into this a whole lot more, but the military spouse side is obviously a big challenge when it comes to employment, especially for those who are still PCSing with an active duty service member, because, of course, of moving so often, or those married to a veteran who maybe the spouse spent a good period of the service member's career out of the workforce for whatever reason the family chose, and now is, transitioned and landed at home or where they're going to make their home, but are now trying to figure out how to get back into, or maybe even start for the first time, really into the workforce. And that's always a really interesting and challenging place for a military spouse to find themselves.
Right. And I'm going to switch gears here a little bit and kind of get into the organization itself. How did it get its start?
Well, it was, not surprisingly, founded by military spouses. I'm actually not one of the founders, though I came in somewhat early in the picture. There were 3 military spouses: Lauren Weiner, Donna Honeycutt and Haley Utlaut, who really kind of got together and realized that at that time, 5 or 6 years ago, when they were really kind of formulating the idea, military spouse employment was not as much in the news or on the forefront as it is right now. And although when they started looking, they realized that there were some resources available for spouses at that time, most of them focused on entry-level positions for military spouses, or more job boards and temporary placement. And these three women in particular were all highly educated, on a professional career path, looking for professional level positions. And there just really wasn't anything that met that need. And they knew, like everyone knows, if you read anything about employment, that networking is how 80% of jobs are found. And that's particularly true when you get into the mid and higher level professional positions. And so they wanted to address that need. And they designed In Gear Career and the chapters that we have, and started small. And in 2012 became an official nonprofit and was working on that. And then it was early 2013 when I joined the team.
Gotcha. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean by this, because when I was in, I went active back in 1993. And my wife at the time, when we went to Oklahoma, she had a degree and very smart. And, the jobs that were available to her were the jobs that she could find by the connections that we had, which were none at the time, were pretty limited. So she ended up taking a job at a bookstore, and before long she was pretty much able to run that, but
Sure.
just sitting back and doing the job that she was assigned. And when I got stationed over in Alaska, it was like starting from scratch again. And we go to Alaska and I'm all taken care of. I mean, I go there, I have a job, things are good. I hit the ground running. Here's your new desk, and everything's all set for me, waiting for me. And the spouse is starting from nowhere, and they don't know anybody. They're maybe meeting a couple of the other spouses and trying to find connections, but there wasn't anything at all in place that could help with anything other than, this place hires spouses, which was, like you said, all entry level.
And especially at that point, and even still some now, that's part of the key, is finding those organizations who are well known for hiring military spouses. Because even though the employment landscape, military or civilian, has changed so drastically, and we know that people for the most part, don't climb a 20-year corporate ladder into the same career track the entire time. But for whatever reason, the stigma that a military spouse is going to come and go very quickly still exists. It's getting better, but that still exists. And so that's exactly what we're trying to overcome on one hand, with some of the work that we do with national employers and talking to them about military spouse employment, but also what you talked about, moving to a new place and not knowing anyone. That's absolutely what we're trying to overcome for the spouses before they even get there. And we do that with the chapters by tying into the local community and making those connections, with the hope that when a new spouse arrives and says that they want to work in whatever industry it is, we can help make those introductions right away and really start that process for them a lot faster.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I mean, people focus a lot on the sacrifices that military members are making every day. Those are nothing to make light of.
Sure.
But spouses are also making sacrifices. And, imagine if a spouse has that perfect job, where they were able to find that perfect job that fits them. And, then here come the orders to PCS, and you got to give that job up. And now you are starting from the bottom again, or starting from square one, trying to find those people who know about the jobs
Absolutely
that are available.
I always say that, when we move to a new location, I feel like you kind of hit the reset button on the giant stopwatch that exists above your head. Because, typically we have a general idea when we move to a new place of how long we're expected to be there. Granted, that changes all day, every day, all the time, when it comes to military life, but that's kind of what it feels like. And so I know that there's a lot of pressure for the spouse to make those connections quickly so that they can try to move forward, with that job search and try to do that. And you talked about sacrifices. And I'll say that certainly military spouses make sacrifices in their career, but a lot of it and the mindset that I find when I'm talking to these professional level military spouses is, yes, that's a big deal. And it absolutely is a sacrifice in a career that would likely look very different if we weren't moving as often as we are and doing all of those things. But we'll happily do it. We really just want the opportunity to pursue a career. We want employers to realize that we're not looking for any kind of handout. We really just want to be able to show them and work to our true potential and be able to provide for our families the same way that the service member is doing, and to be able to do that. And one of the biggest pieces that I think it's overlooked when you think about military spouse employment is how employing a military spouse really sets a military family up for a smoother transition when that service member is ready to finish their military career. Because if you can think about a family that has two incomes, two steady incomes, two careers that have been allowed to grow and hopefully build salaries commensurate with experience and the whole thing, then when it comes to transition and the service member needs to maybe spend time finding their next position in the civilian world, hopefully the military spouse is set up in such a way that they can support the family right through that transition period. And rather than, having what was a one income family go to a no income family for a period of time and having to rely on savings and whatever else that they may have done to kind of set themselves up.
Yeah, that is a great point, Amanda. I was looking through the website and I saw something that jumped out at me, and I had to go back and read it twice. But the unemployment rate, the difference between military spouses and the civilian counterparts. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of astounding. And I don't want to completely misquote here, but the military spouse unemployment rate is still nearing 26% at the last study that I looked at. And that, like you said, is a crazy number. That's almost triple what our counterparts are when we look at, similar education, similar age, and those kind of demographics. So it's a pretty crazy number. Veteran unemployment, thankfully, has gotten a lot better over the past few years. Lots and lots of attention has been paid to veteran unemployment, and the numbers are drastically improving. In fact, I believe that currently veteran unemployment sits lower than their civilian counterparts, which is great. That means companies are really stepping up and putting veterans in jobs and really making that transition work for them. But there's obviously still a lot left to do for military spouses. And though there's certainly challenges that aren't necessarily going to go away right away, like moving as often as most active duty families do, there's definitely ways that organizations can combat that, especially in today's technological world with, remote positions and allowing somebody who's proven themselves to the organization already to take a job with them, if at all possible. Those are just, a couple or the one big idea of that organizations can do to try to, help that aspect. And if that doesn't work, then we love nothing more than organizations that help spouses make connections in the industry, to find a position in their new location.
Right. That's really good. And going back to some of the programs that your organization has, which is helping out, networking, is that, would you say that's the biggest?
Yeah, the chapters that I mentioned at the beginning, that's our bread and butter. It's interesting because, people often feel like we've taken a step back technologically because we're asking people to get together in person, gasp, on a regular basis. But what we're finding, or what we, have proven out, is that especially at the local level, those in-person connections are really where the magic happens. You say things in person when you're having a longer conversation with someone that you don't get to if you're just posting online or clicking through job postings and trying to, find your next job, even on LinkedIn, which is a massively useful tool. There's just something about those in-person connections. And I've always made the joke that Kevin Bacon has nothing on a military spouse. So we we focus on our networking chapters. We're right at around 25 chapters now around the world, at major military installations. And each of those chapters, as they get up and running, meet on mostly a monthly basis, so that career-minded spouses can get together with one another, because often the best connections are made with peers. And then also we work with those chapters to do professional development. So we work with military spouses on things like elevator speeches, because it's crazy how hard it is to answer that question. What do you want to do, when you've had 8 totally different jobs
Right.
before? And so we work on things like that, resume review. We bring in local experts on employment at all of the different places. And one of the big things we actually, and I think this may be in your notes for later, but I'm going to go there really quickly. We merged this year with Hiring Our Heroes, which is part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And one of the reasons that we did that, and why it has been really a perfect match, is because the perfect thing for our local chapters is getting involved with their local chamber of commerce. I mean, that's step one when it comes to meeting business leaders and industry leaders in a local area. And so the connection now with Hiring Our Heroes in the Chamber of Commerce Foundation has really made that relationship easier for us, and has really opened those doors. So we actually have a quicker and greater chance of making the connections that we need, so that we can pass those on to the military spouse. So those chapters are our primary programs.
And so now I love that you brought up the Hiring Our Heroes, because that is a really big deal that you guys merge with them. It's really awesome. And it totally makes sense too. They're already focusing on hiring the heroes, and you guys are focusing on hiring the spouses. You guys should be working together. Absolutely.
Sure.
So with that merge, is that opening up new opportunities for putting chapters? Like, do they have chapters in places where you don't, and vice versa?
So interestingly enough, Hiring Our Heroes already had in existence military spouse programs, but their traditional military spouse programs were to come to major military installations, host a networking event, which they had brand recognition and relationships with the local chambers to bring in businesses, but they were only able to do maybe one a year in each location. So at the time that we at In Gear Career were starting to think about, what, if we want to keep growing this mission and we want to keep getting bigger, we might need to look for a larger nonprofit home. We got in contact with the folks at Hiring Our Heroes, a really interesting networking connection, if you will. One of our founders, Haley, that I mentioned earlier, played basketball at West Point, and her former basketball coach is now the director of military spouse programs at Hiring Our Heroes.
Wow.
So it was a really interesting connection, but we were able to start that conversation because they knew one another. And the reality is that Hiring Our Heroes was looking at starting chapters, because they knew that coming in and doing one event a year, they really needed folks on the ground in those locations to keep those relationships going, to keep those networks growing, and to be able to really keep that momentum up for spouses. And so it really could not have been a more perfect match. So because we merged with them and now have greater resources, we have expanded the chapters. We've opened, let me see, I want to say 7 chapters this year.
Oh,
and
wow.
have a few more on the horizon as well. And I can give you a link, Jeremy, to put in the show notes so folks can find a chapter near them.
Oh,
Like
perfect.
I said, we are all over the United States. And then we have several chapters overseas as well. And we've got one coming soon. You mentioned Alaska. I mean, we're all over the place. So rather than listing off 25 locations, give you that link so that they can find it and connect with us that way.
Great. And are you looking at growing and expanding the amount of chapters that you have?
We're in a good spot right now. You know what it takes, all of our chapters are run by volunteers currently. So what it takes for us to consider a chapter is the right volunteer. And that's somebody who's proactive, somebody who's ready to, really kind of hit the pavement with the local community, and also with the military spouse community, because interestingly enough, a lot of career-minded military spouses have been so used to kind of going it on their own and finding those opportunities that getting the word out to them that we exist and that we're starting in their area is often one of our biggest challenges. Just
Mm.
making sure that the message is heard and getting them together. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job, though, is finding new career-minded military spouses and seeing on their face the same look that I had when I heard somebody talk about in-gear career, which was, oh my gosh, finally. Like there are
Yeah.
others, and I'm so excited to get involved with them. So, but yes, we're always looking to expand, and again, I'll give contact information where if somebody's interested in potentially starting a chapter in their area, they're welcome to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to them about that.
Yeah, that would be perfect. If any of the listeners out there, if you're listening to this and you go to the show notes and you check out to see if there's one in your area and there's not, maybe you're the right person to be running the one that's there.
Absolutely. Yep. And we've got everything you need to get you started. So, we've done this 25 times and counting. So, we've learned some lessons along the way, and I'd be happy to talk anyone through what it takes to really get a chapter started in a new location.
Excellent. Excellent. Going back to your programs, I saw that you also do advocacy. Can you talk on that a
Sure.
little bit?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advocacy that we really work on is talking with employers. I mentioned a little bit already that there are some common misconceptions about either maybe how long a military spouse may stay in a particular position, um, and also the hardest part I think for employers is twofold. Number one, it actually can be finding military spouses. Even when an employer has decided, that's it, I'm in. This is a really undertapped pool of highly talented people, and I'd be silly not to hire them. How do I find them? That's usually their biggest question because, of course,
Mm,
in human resource practices and stuff, most of the time they're not even allowed to ask about marital status, let alone whether or not you're married to a military member or a veteran. And
right.
and so that's one big challenge. So we work to form relationships at the highest levels, as well as at those local levels, with employers that are eager to hire military spouses, so that they'll come to us and let us know when they're looking to fill positions, or if they're opening a new office in Tampa, for example, and they're going to hire 2,000 people. If they let us know that, then we'll do our best to funnel that message out to the military spouses and make introductions so we can get spouses in those positions. The second piece of the advocacy with employers is honestly teaching them how to read military spouse resumes. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense about a military spouse resume. I mean, you heard my background. I went from, I was in the university, working for the university, defense contracting, military exercise, and then I jumped to nonprofit management. Like on paper, that's crazy. And I get it. So if there's no context to an employer, then it looks like hopping, it looks like lack of focus. But when given the opportunity, most military spouses can pull those threads for you, and we can help employers pull those threads too. Like look for common skill sets. For me, it has to do with speaking in public and managing teams, working with volunteers and people with varied backgrounds. I mean, there were a lot of common threads that go through even my Navy Reserve, you know, opportunities and employment things that make a little more sense, but it takes that context. And so we talk to employers about what might be red flags on a resume, lots of job hopping in one geographical location, and what might not be, which is, of course, moving every so often, but finding steady employment. That's a good sign. If a military spouse has been promoted within their organization, obviously that's a great thing, because that means they impressed someone, and usually quickly. Based on the amount of time that we may spend in one place. So we do a lot of advocacy with that too. And then of course, while we're not in any shape or form any kind of lobbying organization or anything like that, we're a traditional 501c3. We do try to keep eyes and ears open when it comes to rules and regulations affecting military spouse employment, just to make sure that we know what we're talking about and that we can help spouses and employers work through anything new that may come along in terms of military spouse employment.
Oh, great. And I saw you also do professional development.
Yeah, so that piece, as I mentioned, happens a lot in our chapters. We do, I also, besides the military.com, have occasionally written articles for other websites as well on career-related things. For NextGen Military Spouse is an online military spouse magazine, and they have a whole career section. I've written for them a few times as well. So that's part of it. But a lot of that professional development happens actually on the ground in our chapters. So where from month to month, we're doing things, like I said, like working on elevator pitches or resume reviews, or doing fun things like hiring a photographer to come and take headshots so you can use it on your LinkedIn profile. Things like that. So we do a lot of that. We do have another new program coming up this year that focuses on professional development, but I'm kind of saving that one for the answer to a later question.
Gotcha. What about job opportunities?
In terms of our organization?
Right. Are you guys hiring now?
We're not right now. For the most part, our chapters are run by our volunteers, but I will tell you that hiring our heroes as the larger organization does occasionally have positions. And just this year, we were able to get 2 in-gear career members into positions with our Veterans Fellowship Program. So certainly when the organization does have positions open across the departments, we use our in-gear career networks to fill those positions when we can.
Very nice. But there are obviously volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. Either, like we talked about earlier, with the potential of starting a new chapter, or diving in on the ground with a lot of the chapters that are already in existence. We always have needs because we're trying to get that word out. We're trying to go to resource fairs and things like that are happening on post. And our primary chapter leads are, of course, not always available to do every single thing. So we love to plug in volunteers.
Very nice. And I imagine if somebody is out there, they're looking for a job, they've got a little bit of extra time. And if they do volunteer to help out, I imagine that they're going to have a lot of opportunities that they wouldn't normally come across just by being in those positions.
Absolutely. And the great part of it, and I've actually talked to a lot of potential chapter leads about exactly that, is, if you are looking for work, it's intimidating, even for someone like me who is really a textbook extrovert. It's intimidating to think about going out into a new city and networking on my own for my own purpose. But if you give me a cause and a reason to do it, like an in-gear career chapter, and connecting with, career-minded military spouses, that's where I can start. And then obviously when somebody says, so is this your full-time job? I say, no, actually I do this as a volunteer. I'm currently looking for work in fill in your industry. It is the perfect segue.
Right.
And it absolutely gives you the opportunity to connect with a lot of people that you may not do so on your own.
Yeah. And I've seen time and time again where you're talking to somebody they're not remotely in the field that you're looking at working in. And you start talking about how you're looking for a job in, technology. Mm-hmm. And you're talking to somebody who's a music teacher.
Yeah.
But then they say, oh, well, my husband or, My brother-in-law
Right.
owns a technology company. There's always those networking connections that you're gonna come across and find. You're gonna find a lot more the more people you talk
Oh,
to.
Kevin Bacon, people, this is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
That's why
Exactly.
I tell people all the time, when you're looking for work, you need to tell everyone you talk to, however you can work it into a conversation, because that person in the school bus line picking up their kids, they might be your next boss. You never know.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. How can our listeners help in Gear Career?
I think the biggest thing, honestly, for us, it depends on your role. If you're a business owner and you're somebody who's hiring, you can absolutely help us by hiring military spouses whenever possible at the local level, and also reaching out to us, because we'd love to be that bridge and that conduit between you and the military spouse. And then for veterans and spouses alike who may be listening, please just spread the word. Let the military spouses and military families in your life know that we exist, because like I said earlier, that's been our toughest job, is really getting the message out there that we're here, and that we exist on the local level, and that we're ready to help folks get connected.
And the best way for folks to get connected with you is how?
Probably the email address is ingearcareer@uschamber.org, or they can just go to our website, which is ingearcareer.org, and that'll tie you through to the whole program, and you can contact us there.
Excellent. Excellent. Is there anything that I missed?
My last tip to anybody listening, veteran or military spouse alike, is like I said, just tell everyone as often as you can when you're looking for work, and get out there and network in person. It makes a big difference.
Absolutely great advice. And I think we are ready for the final three.
You got it.
All right. Question number 1. Who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast?
Well, I'd love to connect you to a sister organization of ours called the Military Spouse JD Network. They are also focused on military spouse employment, but particularly for military spouse attorneys. And they have done some amazing, amazing work with rule changes across a number of states to allow military spouses some accommodations when it comes to joining the bar in a new state. Because as difficult as it is to find work, imagine sitting for a new bar exam every time you cross state lines.
Wow. Yeah, that would be horrible.
Yeah. But I can connect you with someone there if you'd like to talk to them, because they've done some great work.
Yeah, I absolutely would. I have never heard of that organization, and I imagine there's some people that would fit in that organization out there who haven't heard of them either. So
absolutely,
I'd love to have them on.
Great.
Okay. Question number 2, what upcoming project has you fired up right now?
So this is the one where I saved my answer.
Nice.
So In Gear Career is launching a pilot program this year, and we're calling it Amplify. It's happening in October. We're going to do our first version in the DC area. We're partnering with the USO, and they've allowed us to use their wonderful space in Fort Belvoir area. They've got a massive facility over there. So Amplify is actually a 2-day career intensive program for military spouses. It's going to be an application process, and we're getting ready to release those applications actually next week. But the idea behind it is we're going to bring 25 military spouses, 25 or 26 military spouses into this program to go through 2 days of really hands-on career coaching and preparation. So we're going to match them up with mentors in their industry of choice to the best of our ability. We're going to make sure that when they leave, the resume is finished. We're going to make sure the LinkedIn profile is completely up to date. We're going to do some interactive sessions on salary negotiations, interview tips, how to answer that dreaded "what brought you to the area" question for military spouses, and things along that lines. And we've also got some resources in place if the military spouse is an entrepreneur. So again, 2 days in person. We're really hoping to roll this program out next year regionally and do it in a few different locations across the United States, but we're going to start in DC in October, and I'm really, really excited. We've gotten some amazing partnership from some organizations and from some corporations who are really, really amped up about helping us and helping these military spouses amplify their careers.
Outstanding. And I will talk to you offline about that. I'm
Perfect.
here in Annapolis, which is not too far away.
Awesome.
And might be able to, help out in some way, shape, or form.
Would love that. Thanks so much.
Cool. Okay. Question number 3. If you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it?
$10 million. It's amazing. Our nonprofit and so many others start on such a shoestring budget that $10 million just sounds amazing.
Right.
And almost overwhelming. But I would tell you, first and foremost, I'd make all of our chapter leads positions paid. I really think that if we were able to employ people doing this full time, obviously we could exponentially increase the impact that we would have making those chapter connections. I also would love, and one of my closest friends, and she knows who she is if she's listening, and I have dreamt about creating kind of a co-work space for military spouses. So I would love to do that in a lot of the locations where we have chapters. And if you're familiar with Team Red, White, and Blue, I know they have kind of the fire-based gym at their Tampa location. And I'd like to create some kind of gathering place like that for our chapters that was, one central place where spouses who work remotely can come there to work during the week if they're tired of sitting in their house, and a place where people would just know where to find us, both from the spouse and the employment side of things. So I'd start there. I don't know if that would take $10 million, but it would certainly get us started.
That sounds like an amazing way to spend $10 million for sure. And I did spend a little bit of time in the gym in Tampa. That's a great headquarters that Team Red, White, and Blue has.
Yeah, it is.
Very cool. So for that person out there with $10 million,
oh, yes, please,
and you're looking for somewhere to put it, Amanda just told you exactly how that could be put to good use.
That's right.
So yeah, let's give that person or anybody else out there with maybe a little less than 10 million that wants to donate. What is the best way?
Contact the U.S. Chamber Foundation. They are our parent organization. But again, if you work through the In Gear Career website and get in contact with me, I could certainly put you in touch with the right person at the foundation, and we'd love to have that.
Outstanding. Well, this has been an incredible interview. I really enjoyed it a lot, Amanda.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it too, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to kind of share our message.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that we can get the word out and get some new chapters started, and also start filling up some of the other chapters, and maybe get some more volunteers, some more donations, get everything going.
Absolutely.
All right. You have a great night.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. As always, make sure you go and check out the show notes at veteranresourcepodcast.com/072. And I'm going to have all of the links that we talked about during this episode to make it super easy for you to get connected with Amanda and In Gear Career. I'm going to go now and enjoy some quality time with family here in Arizona. This place is absolutely beautiful. And if you get a chance, get up to Sedona. Spend a couple days there, and as always, just blew my mind. That's all I got for you today. I'll see you tomorrow for episode 73.